Where did always the scars on your knee come from? What's that about?
The day of my last final exam, I was on an airplane for Alaska to climb. And my friend and I, not the same one, a guy named Brad, he and I had scouted out a line on a very prominent buttress, about almost a 5,000 foot rock buttress on a peak near Denali called Mount Hunter. And it's the north buttress of that. And so he and I had been training all winter doing hard climbs in Rocky Mountain National Park, just outside of Boulder, and went up there knowing this was going to be a huge challenge for us. And so we arrived there, and it turned out to be one of the snowiest springs on record. And this route wasn't very safe. So we made a couple of attempts on the North Buttress of Hunter. It had not been climbed at that time. But we scouted a line that subsequently was climbed by a fellow named Mark Twite. But Brad and I tried it, got up on it twice, and it's a series of vertical rock bands that are between 500 and 1,000 feet tall, separated by 60 to 70 degree ice fields. And it was snowing so much that frequent avalanches were coming down and scouring the face. And we were almost swept off a couple of times. We luckily managed to be right under the vertical rock bands when these avalanches came down. They weren't like massive avalanches, but definitely big enough to sweep us off the face.
So was that luck that you guys were there?
It was just luck that we were able to be in a sheltered spot when the avalanches went over top of us. And so in each case, we just turned tail and went down as fast as we could. And we probably spent almost 2 weeks waiting for conditions to change, and it just wasn't changing. And so Brad at that point was getting bored with it all and said, I'm leaving. And I said, well, heck, I spent the money to come here. I'm going to do something. And so, I didn't have a permit for Denali, but it was just around the corner up the glacier, 10 miles. So I thought I took my skis and loaded up a big pack, and I skied up to Denali thinking, well, I'm just going to go up there and see what happens, and I was using, ski gear, and that sort of thing was pretty primitive in the 70s for skiing in the backcountry. I was using normal cross-country skis with flimsy little low-top boots, and partly because they were very light and I could move pretty fast on them. And then I would carry my mountaineering boots. So I put all of that stuff in the pack. And I was on that route that's nowadays very popular. But at that time, there was almost no one on the mountain besides me. This was early May, like just the first week of May. And because, like I said, my last final happened, we were on a plane to Anchorage that afternoon. And so I got up there, and again, the weather was terrible. So I hung out at made a little base camp at about 14,000 feet on this. And I was looking up at this 5,000 foot face above me, and I saw this beautiful line, this couloir, which is a snow and ice filled gully. And I thought, wow, that's a great looking line, but it looks like it would have a lot of avalanche danger in it. And so I spent a couple of days waiting again for the weather, and freakishly at about midnight one night, I was outside, it's daylight there, or almost twilight. It never gets darker than just sort of twilight at that time of year. I saw that whole couloir rip out with a huge avalanche. It came right down it. And I thought, okay, that thing's going to be safe now. I can climb it. So I literally grabbed, I had a little fanny pack, which were kind of a new invention in the 70s, just a small pack and I put a water bottle and 2 Baby Ruth candy bars in that fanny pack. And then I headed off to climb this thing, and then ended up climbing it. At the time,
you left your main pack behind?
I left my camp there with all the stuff. Yeah.
Right.
And I was going to climb to climb to the top, come back down to my camp. And I figured I could do it in, 8 or 10 hours. So didn't seem like that would be too long to be away from that stuff. But I left at midnight. It was very cold, so I had pretty much all the clothes I had brought with me on. And I did, the initial part was challenging. There's a big crevasse at the start of the climb. What they call that a Bergschrund. It's where the glacier separates from the stationary, the permanent snow on the face. And that was really sketchy to get across. It's quite a big lip on it. But once I got across it, I realized I couldn't go back. I have to go up now because there's no way to recross this thing. So I climbed up the thing. It's about, I think the total vertical in the couloir was about 4,500 feet. So, almost 1,500 meters. And, it's about 50 degrees. And because it had avalanche, the bed surface was now very firm. Some of it ice and some of it just very hard packed, what they call neve, which is kind of like hard styrofoam ice. So it was perfect for climbing. And I got to the top and was pretty euphoric. I think, oh man, I've just done this first descent, this new route on a huge mountain by myself. And so but then I returned back to that camp that morning, because I got to the summit at about, I think, probably 7 or 8 in the morning. And then I was back down in maybe 3 hours. It was probably 10 or 11 in the morning when I got back to my camp. And by that time, some other people had shown up to where I was camping. And they were kind of amazed that I'd done this thing. I don't think anybody had done something like that there that early. Now that particular route does get climbed with some frequency. But, I was so excited about that. I thought, well, I'm going to just ski all the way back down to where the airplane dropped us off, where I had more food. I was going to rest a few days, and then I was going to ski up and climb the Cassine Ridge, that route that I mentioned trying before with my friend Colin. And because at that time, I was on top of the world. I just thought, well, heck, I just did that. I can go can solo the Cassine, which I don't think had been soloed at that point. So I waited all day until the glacier began to freeze up, because during the day when it's hot, like we were talking about, it's just mush. And because I had these crappy, skinny little skis and very soft, light boots, I was having to use a ski turn called the telemark turn, which is kind of unstable. But it was on that primitive gear. It was the only way to really control and turn the skis.
What does that look like?
Well, it's where it was originated in the province of Telemark, Norway, when back in the 20s, probably the teens or the 20s, when everybody skied on crappy skis that didn't want to turn. And the way you get into a staggered sort of split stance. People who are familiar with, let's say, weightlifting exercises, it looks a little like a split squat, where one foot is well out in front of the other. And you angle the front foot and the front ski slightly compared to the rear ski. And that pushes the rear ski around a corner. And when you've got these crappy skis that don't want to turn, they weren't really designed to turn. They're designed to go straight. And so I started down at about midnight. Things had frozen up pretty well. I skied down maybe 2,000 feet or so. And I was in the midst of this telemark turn when my front ski broke through the frozen crust and went in a couple feet, so right up to my knee. And I had about an 80-pound pack. And I pivoted, so we can imagine my lower leg was completely immobilized vertically in that crust of snow. I pivoted over that knee, around that knee with this 80-pound pack. And it made a horrendous noise. And so I had to, first I'm upside down. My head is stuck through the crust of the snow and I've got this big pack pushing my face in. I had to get out of that. And then I could tell something was wrong because my leg was pointing the wrong direction. And I reached down into the hole where my foot was and undid the binding, and it pulled my leg out. And it looked like my knee was a universal joint. I couldn't move my lower leg. I could move my body and my lower leg would just sort of dangle along below me, and I had to pick it up and reposition it to put it where I wanted. So I realized then I've done something really bad to my knee. I didn't have any idea what it was. And I was all by myself. There was no one on that part of the mountain at all.
What time is it? What time?
This was around midnight, 1:00, maybe 1:00 in the morning. Again, it's daylight almost, so it's, the darkness isn't any kind of an issue. So I started to set up my tent, and I pulled the tent poles out, and it was one of the very first tents that was made. Now almost all tents have the poles have little rubber bungees in them to hold them together, so that when you pull the poles out, they snap and become, the poles are in sections and they snap together. This is one of the very first tents that was made like that. And as I'm pulling the poles out and beginning to set up my tent, I drop one of those poles and it goes skittering down the glacier and bridges a crevasse about 100 yards away. And I'm just going, oh shit, what else could go wrong now? And so I have to crawl down there 100 yards, my leg dragging behind me, get this pole that's spanning the crevasse, crawl back up, set up the tent, get inside, and then the pain started. And so I thought, okay, I am going to be delirious with pain tomorrow. So I had a little diary that I kept, and I wrote down this list of things I was going to need to do the next morning when I had to head down. And I spent a very uncomfortable night. I didn't even have aspirin with me. It had no painkillers of any kind. Spent a really uncomfortable night there. And in the morning, by morning, my knee was the size of a soccer ball. And completely rigid, locked, till it couldn't be moved at all. And I made a little sled out of putting my skis together and lashing the pack to the skis. And then I lay on top of the pack, and I pushed with my good leg and I pulled with my ice axe. And then I spent 2 days crawling down the glacier back to where the airplane had dropped me off and was going to pick me up. And then when I finally got back to the landing spot, where the plane was going to pick up, once again, the weather had turned terrible. And the guy who flew me in there was a friend of mine from Boulder. He had a ski plane operation there where he flew people onto the glacier, named Jim Sharp, who's since been killed in a flying accident. But Jim knew that I was hurt because there was a radio operator on the glacier then. And the radio operator's job was to let the planes know when the weather was good enough that they could land on the glacier. Because landing on a glacier with low clouds, everything's white and you have no depth perception at all. So it's extremely hazardous for everyone. And so for 5 days, I lay there waiting for a break in the clouds. And I could hear Jim fly in almost every day, circle around. He came in a couple times each day looking for a hole in the clouds where he could come down through and pick me up. And finally, there was a little hole, and he dropped through this cloud, and he had radioed to the radio operator, hey, I'm going to try to get through here, tell Scott to get ready. So I packed everything up, and Jim landed, and we were on the ground he was on the ground for less than 5 minutes, and threw me in the plane, flew me back to Talkeetna. I went home to Boulder, and I was kind of a wreck. Took me another several days to get an appointment to see an orthopedic surgeon and now remember, I'm kind of at the peak of my youthful vigor at 20, whatever I was, 24 years old or so. And I go in to see the surgeon, and he says, well, I've got some bad news. You're probably never going to be very functional again. This is, I had basically destroyed the knee, had completely dislocated. When I pulled my leg out of that hole, I was staring, I was looking at the bottom of my ski boot, and it was right in front of my chest. I was looking at the sole, and my knee was that blown out. And so he said, I'll do the best. Orthopedic surgery in the 70s was nothing like it is today. And he patched you back together, but he said, you're going to probably be walking with a cane the rest of your life. And that was a pretty shocking thing to hear for somebody who, was, I was coming off the mountain with this euphoria that I can do anything. And then you get this dose of reality. And it all happened, in a literally less than a second. I went from being Superman to crawling on the glacier, hoping to survive.